Benefactor underwriting for this broadcast has been provided by a grant from Republic Bank. The power of red is back. Major underwriting support for this broadcast has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Customers Bank, Collins Building Services, Marks Paneth. Additional underwriting support has been provided by grants from AmTrust Title, Bank of America, Capital One Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Castamatidis Red Apple Group, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Ocean First Bank, RPW Group, TD Bank, the One Stop Property Group, and these friends.
Where can you live in a beautiful apartment, not too far from the city, pretty close to the ferry, and rent at a reasonable price, or even buy an apartment or a townhouse? There's an area in Queens that people don't really know a lot. It's called the Rockaways, but unfortunately I haven't discussed this in about 15 years. But today, with the help of my executive producer, Jerry Romski, we're going to be talking about developments in the Rockaways and Arverme. Jerry has been nice enough to help us get Sara Levenson, Senior Director, L&M Development. Mr. Jerry Romski, who appeared many years ago on the show, who is the General Counsel and the Senior Project Developer at Arverne on the Sea. And last but not least, Marcal, who's the CEO of the McCall Group. So what has happened over the last 15 years? Tell us about the Rockaways, since you're the historian. You've been involved with that neighborhood since the beginning.
Yes, we have been involved in the development of the Rockaways, Gene. And yes, it's been a long journey since I was last here. We sort of had to, right after that appearance, we had the recession of 2008, which we worked our way through at Arverme by the Sea and continued to develop. Then a small little storm called Sandy hit the Rockaways, and thankfully Arverme by the Sea survived Sandy almost unscathed.
What would be interesting is, since I don't know if everybody knows what Arverme by the Sea is, and what took place in the early 2000s.
Certainly.
In the Rockaways, so we can get a better idea of where
Certainly.
it is and what's happened over the last 22 years.
Certainly. Well, back in 2000 or so, you had 325 acres of really vacant urban wasteland that sat right on the Rockaway Peninsula, facing the same ocean as the folks in the Hamptons face. And the city, it's actually started in the Giuliani administration, believe it or not, through their Department of Housing Preservation and Development, issued a RFP for the development of a section of that urban renewal site. And our joint venture team, which is comprised of the Beechwood organization and Michael Dubb out in Long Island, as well as the Benjamin Companies, which is now owned by Alvin Benjamin's wife, Debbie. They put together a proposal, and they were selected to develop.
So we had vacant land, basically. We had all this vacant acreage.
Yes.
There were not that many people over there. 70 years ago, there used to be bungalows, as they would say, and it was a different community. And then it literally was a wasteland.
Complete urban wasteland. And then we had.
But as you said, with the same orders, the Hamptons, 15 minutes to the city, a Marine Park Bridge over there, convenience, and it had great attributes.
Certainly. It was really a hidden gem. And we started the development. We had to take it through the approval process. It was one of the largest demappings in the city's history, one of the largest rezonings, and we took it through relatively quickly, frankly. We got our approvals for the development in mid-2003. We delivered our first home because it is a master plan development. It has 600 or so units of two-family homes. It has a shopping center. It has a YMCA. It will have a future charter school. We are now developing the apartment complexes that line the area between Beach 69th and 67th. We just delivered our second building, both of them fully occupied. We're continuing to develop.
This is a rental building.
The new buildings are rental buildings, that's correct, Gene. But we did deliver two-family homes that we initially sold back in 2003 for $395,000.
So let's talk about that. Somebody who was lucky enough to buy a two-family house, okay, had rental income, and the price then and what it's worth going for today.
Right now, those homes that we sold for $395,000 and $495,000 back in 2003 are now on the resale market for close to $1 million, if not over $1 million.
So the two families, and what are they getting for rent on one of the apartments?
Well, our apartments on the two-family apartments.
On the two-family, and then
well, it depends on the two or three. They're probably about $2,000, $2,300 or so a month. Our apartments, we have a range of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s, depending on the location, because many of them have very spectacular, beautiful views of the Atlantic Ocean, including the surf beach that sits out in front of our development. The studios start at about $1,900. The one bedrooms are about $2,300. The 2s are about $2,900. And the 3s are about $3,500 or so, depending on the location and the view.
So here's the question. How did this kid from Brooklyn one day say he took his bicycle over and he saw this property and he said, you know what? It has all these great attributes. You know, they have a shopping center now. They're redeveloping. Okay, they're taking care of it. How do you decide to get involved and to build for sale property in the Rockaways in Arverme?
So I'm a developer. I'm based out of Brooklyn, and we were involved in the initial Peninsula Hospital when it was for sale initially. We were actually under contract. At the time, we thought that we could undertake that project, but it was way over our head in terms of the amount of units to rezoning, and we weren't really affordable housing developers. But we ended up, when we met with Alicia Glenn to discuss the financing, and we realized that we weren't going to be able to do this project, she said, look, I don't think you understand what's going on in the Rockaways. And I'm like, you're right. I don't understand because I haven't been there in years. And I always looked at the Rockaways as a very challenged area, but I didn't know that Sandy destroyed it. And I was watching the new infrastructure come in, but I never actually looked at it. I went to contract because they brought me in as a developer on the hospital without actually going to look at it. So as it turns out, one day I got on a bicycle and I decided I was going to ride over from Brooklyn to the Marine Park Bridge, and I, enter the new boardwalk over there, and I'm like, go all the way down to Rockaway, and it's beautiful. I'm like, this can't be Rockaway. This can't be the Rockaways. I know the Rockaways that I used to drive under the L and duck when I used to drive down to the Five Towns, and it had completely changed. So I decided to go down one street, and I picked Beach 116th Street because it looked like a little busier than the other streets. So I ended up looking at that street. I said, you know what? This is a great street to build something nice there. And I was involved in a medical facility in Bensonhurst that I had done with my Mount East Hospital, and they were looking for they were looking to expand in the Rockaways with medical with Northwell Hospital. So anyway, try to reach the owner, and I pull up to the building on my bicycle, and I see there's a little for rent sign, and one of the numbers are faded over there. I was like, okay, this guy doesn't even remember that he has this building because clearly that sign has been up there. Maybe it was through Hurricane Sandy that it was up there. So after a few attempts, I was able to reach the owner or someone who worked for the owner, and I asked him if he's, I see it for rent sign. He goes, yeah, it's for rent. I'm like, is it for sale? I said, yeah, probably. I'll talk to the owner, make an offer. So fast forward about a few months later, we ended up buying that property. Initially, we were going to build a medical building there. Then we were going to build a mix of affordable housing and market rate housing. But by the time we really rolled up our sleeves and as the area started changing, we felt that condominiums were really the best approach there because what we saw in the Rockaways, at least in that area, was home ownership was key. And to make an impact on that street, which is a challenged street, like many streets in the Rockaways, and this goes back at the end of 2015, we really needed people to establish a home there, and we wanted to build it. And we also had our sights on some other parts of that street, which we subsequently bought and are going to be developing soon, potentially 300-400 units there in the very near future. A biggest challenge to get that project off the ground was financing. You know, condo project 2016, although we had established some good relationships with lenders, they weren't buying into it. You know, we were estimating that we would sell at about $600 a foot, which is a really low threshold anywhere in New York City. You know, we figured we bought it right. Construction costs were manageable at the time, and we'd really make little profit, but it would really be the way to change that street. And then on the next project, we would kind of build off that. I think we went through 3 or 4 lenders. I think Banco at one point was very interested, and as it turned out, they had a hurricane in Puerto Rico at the time, so they decided, you know, we just don't like water right now. Then there was another lender that came there, didn't like the Rockaways. So the folks at Bank Lumi, you know, were interested. They saw what I had done in another project with them. I got them to rent bikes. Next on Beach 116th Street is a little cute bicycle shop, and 5 executives from Bank Lumi. I think it was like 100 degrees that day, but they loved the boardwalk. I got them to ride from 116th to 100th Street, and we had a deal by the time I came back. Of course, there was a lot of conditions, but they ended up being the lender over there, and to date, we're about 60% sold.
What's the nature, what's the characteristic, the age of the people buying, you know, the family size and so on?
So we have a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms and only a few 3 bedrooms. It's really a mix. You have a couple of residents that lived in the area in Bell Harbor or Neponsit, or
Wanted to downsize.
wanted to downsize, loved the area, wanted to stay there. We have children of that grew up there that had left because there was really nothing to buy that was interesting or affordable. Rockaways was obviously didn't offer a whole lot except for, you know, your project, which came
Jerry's
nice.
project was one of the projects. There were, you know, Vinnie Rizzo at the Briarwood
Water's Edge.
organization did the Water's Edge. I mean, basically over the past 20 years, and L&M is now involved, and I want you to tell us about what you're doing. You know, there have been developments, and I'd say there's a resurgence. And at $600 a foot, it's a very reasonable price. In addition, you know, there are people who could be, you know, living in Florida 6 months of the year, going here for 6 months. You have that opportunity over there. Let's talk about what you're doing.
Sure, I can pick up Jerry's story from 2003. We responded to the Arverme East RFP. It was the tri-venture between L&M Development Partners, Triangle Equities, and the Bluestone Organization. And we were awarded the site. I think the project looked very different in 2003. In 2005, when we were awarded, it was primarily big box retail, market rate, a little bit more low rise. Then the 2008 crash hit and the project was put on hold. Then Sandy hit and the project was put on hold again.
So how many holds have you had so far?
Ooh, I would say 2.
Okay.
I would say there was a COVID slowdown, but we're really powering through that one. So I think about 5 years ago, we went back to the city, repositioned the project to be a primarily affordable housing development. 80% income restricted from low, moderate, and middle income. 20% of the units will be for sale home ownership. 2-family, single-family townhouses, and we're bringing back the bungalow, which we're very excited about, a code-compliant bungalow.
So talk about the bungalow. I mean,
Sure. So I think we're looking at more of an entry-level home ownership.
for my audience,
Sure.
tell me what a bungalow is.
Sure. So they were the primary housing type on the peninsula probably starting in the late 19th century through mid 20th century. They were seasonal housing, really not winterized. I would say probably 500 square feet, maybe 600. They were compact. 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms. Sometimes they had a loft. They would back up, to each other with a common greenway or alley. You can see them still on 108th Street, and I think that there's still some in the historic district in the mid-20s.
Yeah.
So what are you building now?
So we're building something similar. Probably a mix of sizes, about 600 square feet. Looking at the lofts, looking at that model of communal green space to be shared by...
Year-round?
Yes, these would be year-round.
Okay, because the old ones were not winterized.
Correct. So we're looking at a winterized year-round model and, really focusing our home ownership product for mid-market, entry-level, first-time home buyers.
So how much would a unit cost, and who would be eligible to buy it?
That's a great question. I think we're still in the early planning stages for the bungalows. We're focusing right now primarily on a lot of public works projects that are needed in our end of the development, including a 35-acre nature preserve. There's extensive infrastructure work that needs to be completed. And we're also, from a resiliency perspective, raising the overall site to be above 2 feet above the sandy surge inundation. So we're really focusing right now on land development and infrastructure to be able to support the 1,650 units that are coming. 80% will be income restricted. We're looking at a strong, moderate, middle income product here. There will be a 50% community board preference for community board 14. And so that's about 1,300 or so units, and the balance will be a for sale. We're also exploring, because we understand the importance of building equity, especially in the Arverne and Edgemere communities, we're also looking at an affordable homeownership product, and working with our city partners to create a program to allow existing community members who've been waiting for this project for so long to build equity in the project.
So where your project physically located? What streets?
Sure.
And then I want Mark to talk.
So I think we're probably the furthest east of all the projects here. We start on Beach 32nd Street and go to Beach 41st. We view ourselves as being very deeply embedded in the Arverme and Edgemere communities. But the development site is from Beach 32nd to Beach 41st. Then we have a welcome center that will have urban park ranger station and a comfort station that will demonstrate all the resilient and energy efficient methodologies we'll be using on the development site, and an urban farm focused on food insecurity. That's between 41st and 44th. And then we're working on developing now a 35-acre nature preserve that will be run by the New York City Parks Department between Beach 44th.
What about retail?
Retail, we're looking at several 100,000 square feet of commercial and community facility space. We're really focusing on leveraging the project to support local businesses, MWBE businesses, and businesses that are currently operating out of their homes, and also looking to balance the rising tourism that we're seeing.
Okay, so listening to this, we're talking about it's taken 20 years, and this is going to probably take another 10 years at least to come to fruition. Let's talk about how long Arverme by the sea.
Sure, well, we go from Beach 80th Street down to Beach 62nd Street. And as part of the development piece, the place, as we identified earlier, was an urban wasteland, so we had to put all the new public infrastructure in. There was no real city subsidy involved. That was really part of the arrangement with HPD, who, by the way, I think we can all attest to, at least Sara and I, have been great partners throughout this process.
Absolutely.
And continue to be. I mean, I know we are very excited with the new administration. I think we see some fresh vision about home ownership. I think it's exciting, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the community, some home ownership.
I don't want to say, when do you think you'll be finished with your phase of the project?
Well, if you go back 15 years ago, I was supposed to be done about 10 years ago. But I'm guessing, Gene, that we probably have another 5 years or so. We have another 3 buildings, one of which should start construction sometime.
And the building is a rental building?
Well, the next building is going to be a rental building. We have not made any decisions yet about the last 2 buildings, whether they will be actually for sale or not. We've always been very flexible at Arverme, which I think was very important. We did not stop, actually, unlike our friends down east during the recession and during Sandy. Granted, we were sort of more advanced at that point. So we continued to plod through, and we continued to build. We built our Stop and Shop, the YMCA. We finished our 2 families. Hopefully the school will start soon. So we continue to sort of push through. We had actually hoped to do the marina over on the marina site. Who knows, maybe that'll come back to life at some point.
So let's talk about certain other things that have attracted you. The hotel, the new hotel, which is about 2 years old, I believe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The brewery, a couple of breweries.
Yes, the Rockaway Brewing Company.
So let's talk about, what do you see?
Well, so I think one of the primary reasons I was optimistic about building the Rockaways, transportation has always been a challenge there. I guess the A train is not the best, means of transportation. And
Right, it's improved dramatically.
yes, it has. It
So
has.
in addition to the two-fare zone, the schlep on the train could have been an hour and a half.
Right.
Still is.
Yeah, at the same time, there was discussion about the ferry. So I think it's worth mentioning that the ferry, is, I feel, really gave me the encouragement to do this because, at that point, Mayor de Blasio was behind it, and no one was really sure it was going to happen because it had to be subsidized. But I was fortunate enough to meet him on a plane, and I was like, listen, I'm in the Rockaways, just look me in the face and tell me that the ferry's going to happen.
So when did
He
the
says, I
ferry
promise you it will.
when did it's about 2 years?
No, it's
No,
it's after
it's-
it's 5 years already.
It's 5 or 6
5
years
years,
ago,
yes.
yeah.
And it's an excellent,
great trip.
excellent
It's a
transportation.
great way
yeah.
of transport. It's 50 minutes to
It's-
downtown.
Unfortunately, the boats that they use in the summer does not have the right capacity. You can have 500 people waiting there because you have people visiting the beaches there.
Right.
The biggest challenge that we've had in the Rockaways is the use of other properties there. So on Beach 116th Street today, fortunately, it's starting to pick up a little bit, but we actually are building another project on Beach 101st Street, which we repurposed. There was a restaurant, and we're delivering 60 units hopefully by September.
Rentals?
Rentals, yes. I mean, so our focus is really rentals.
And
at this
what
point.
do you think the rental price will be for these 60 units?
So we visited Jerry's project, which is a really beautiful project. It's a little bit of a different area. We're kind of closer to the water. We're right near the surfing area, smaller units. We kind of use the model that we've used more typically in the urban market, like in Williamsburg. So not that small, but we believe, I guess talking per square foot, probably about $45 a square foot. So depending on the size.
Reasonable price.
Yes, and today it's very reasonable, and there's nothing available in the Rockaways for rent. Nothing. You cannot find a unit there.
I mean, our units, Gene, we have like our amenity spaces. We have a beautiful pool. We have a beautiful rec area. It'll match up to anyone's
Yeah.
development in Williamsburg or anywhere else. Plus, unlike in Williamsburg or Long Island City, where you look at the water, in the Rockaways, you actually could use the water.
Yeah.
We have a surf beach directly in front of us. The boardwalk runs the entire stretch. I mean, it runs all the way down to the east.
No
to the
one
west.
leaves the Rockaways. In those rent-stabilized buildings on the water, no one leaves.
You mean the Jassa housing? Going
Besides that, pick a typical apartment building, the turnover is non-existent because they love the Rockaways. And, the other thing I wanted to mention is that one of the biggest challenges, as I was speaking about the lenders, is, Rockaways, and you know this better than I do, was always a dumping ground for every homeless shelter, for every old age facility. It was cheap land, and people took advantage of that. And what we're up against in many instances are more people trying to open up shelters and using properties that can
In
be
the Rockaways?
in the Rockaways. Sure, absolutely. And I've been on the forefront to oppose it. Not that I'm opposed to shelters. I'm opposed to dumping 3 of them on a block. Just because land is cheap and someone sees an opportunity to destroy a neighborhood. So this is a battle throughout the city. Obviously, you hear about it many times, but I think.
See, but I think the Rockaways, Arverme, Edgemere, they've had a bad rap. Okay, and I really believe that the story hasn't been told. Okay, part of the story was myself not telling it, and I think telling the story of what you have there, and all these nice amenities and these nice apartments, and you're convenient. Okay, and if you don't have a ferry, if you have a car, it's even more convenient. Okay, that you have different means of transportation. At one time before you built the supermarket there was nothing. It was the nearby bodega. Okay, and when I still remember when people were thinking of hotels 10 years ago, no one would look at that. And when you bring out the bungalows, if I had to tell certain people that there are going to be bungalows again, they'll want to buy them. Okay, because where do you get something? The beach right over there. You have the ocean. You have all of these opportunities within the community. So I think it's a great.
But one thing we haven't talked about, which I think is so valuable and special about the Rockaways, is the culture, the arts culture, the culture of the food, the community groups, the interconnectivity. I've never been in communities that have been strongly, they might have different opinions about things, but have such community activism, have wonderful arts and culture, just a wonderful community down there, which I think is very different than what you see in Williamsburg, downtown Brooklyn, Manhattan. It's just really, really exciting. to see how involved everyone is, and just the talent there is really also very exciting. And you can't really, in my mind, do a master plan community or development without really taking into account those other things that make living in the Rockaways so special.
Right.
There is a thriving restaurant scene now.
There is.
Yeah, there is.
I mean,
It's
in Arverne,
amazing.
if I would have told you 5 years ago, you have a very famous French bistro, Bar Masai,
Right.
written up in the New York Times, getting 4.5
Yep.
stars. You-
Rockaway Beach Bakery
the
got written
bakery,
in
the super burrito. We have all the Claudette.
Right.
We have everything there.
Yeah,
Everything.
one of the benefits, of the way that Beach 116th Street and other areas are going to get cleaned up is, we have 86 apartments. We have about 50 families living there. So now there's the voices, that want to be heard about, hey, you got to clean this place up. So the new administration is taking proactive measures to do that. The vagrants, that you have 2 shelters on the block, and now the city is doing what they need to do because they're listening to residents. They don't care. The developer can never have a voice when there's an issue.
Right.
I think we know that. But when you live there and your kids are there, and now the local officials and the electeds, need to respond, and that's what's happening.
And I'm very happy that I've been able to bring the subject up to the community and the general public, which will air in a couple of weeks. In addition, I'll be very happy to bring all of you back because I think there's so much taking place. And I think people should know about this hidden gem, a place where I spent time as an Army reservist. And I'd like to thank my executive producer, Jerry, for bringing it up
Actually-
here. Sarah, who wasn't even born when I was involved with the Rockaways. And wait, Mark, who's in between both of us, okay, for being here. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you, Jamie.